Let's see here. Get my screen share going. What did I just do?
Put it on a face page.
That's not what I meant to do. Oh, okay. You guys just stand by for a second. I know this is, I'm not, for whatever reason, this just does not want to cooperate. Guess because it's not Thursday night. There we go. Get back over here. I want to say hello to everybody and welcome to the YouTube Model Builders Tuesday night general hangout. Tuesday's hangouts are a subject oriented. Tonight is still in the JMRI basics. We'll be covering Digitrax hookup tonight, the basics for Digitrax. Tommy's going to be our guest for Digitrax tonight. Chris is going to give us a recap on the last JMRI show of what we kind of covered there in NCE. Also, we have Andrew here, Andy, I mean. He's going to speak about the Sprague also, so we're going to have an interesting show tonight. Just want to introduce myself as Johnny Reb. Dude has got family in town, so he wasn't able to cover the show tonight and asked me if I would do that, so that's what I'm doing for him. We are the proud sponsor of the YouTube Model Builders, the eMag, and the YouTube Model Builders live show. The eMag comes out every 2 months, and it just came out a couple weeks ago, so you can go to the website, download it if you hadn't already. YouTube live show, Model Builders live show, is once a month, and that's generally the third Saturday of the month. We just had one about, 2 weeks ago, a week ago. I'd like to ask everybody to, if you're not speaking, please mute your mic to help keep the echoes and other gremlins down, background noises and all that. If you do smoke or want to have a drink of wine or something, please turn your mics off while doing so. So we'll start out the show tonight with Chris. Let him do a recap on last show of JMRI. So, Chris, you've got the floor.
There you go. Sorry, I had to unmute. So, thanks, Johnny. All right. So, if you guys were with us last week, you know we did a introduction on how to install JMRI and get it up and running, and I did showed how to do an NCE connection. And tonight I'll show just a real quick recap in case you weren't there, and then we're going to move on and let Tommy do a really good Digitrax installation with the PR3, which can be a little more tricky. And then after that, Andy is going to jump in and show how you can use a Sprague instead of a command station if you want to do some programming with JMRI and some other things. And I think he's going to touch on a few other subjects just quickly, like Raspberry Pi or Arduino, if you're so inclined. But most of tonight is going to be, you know, this next logical step after you install the software, which is to get it hooked up to your command station. So, real quick, I'm just going to do a screen share, and assuming that you have JMRI up and running now. If not, go back and watch last week's show. And can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay. So here's your Decoder Pro, which is where most guys will start with JMRI, and once you have JMRI installed, you're going to want to go to, and this is for anyone, not just NCE, but I'm going to actually do something tonight that I didn't do last week, because I'm going to literally delete these connections to show you how easy it is really to reestablish them. I have 3 connections on my system right now for 3 different reasons. And this is what you're going to see if you click this little connections.
All right,
Yep.
Chris.
Yep.
We're just seeing the original front page.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me change my sharing now.
I love you, honey. If you don't feel good, go back to bed, hon.
Whew, the 1,000 mirrors.
Yeah. Okay, now you see the preferences window?
Yes.
Okay. If I close, I just close this one window here. All right, so let's try this again. So here's what you'll see when you first open Decoder Pro.
All right, you just closed your preference window.
All right, let me start this one more time with some of those gremlins he was talking about.
Jim, can you mute your mic, please? Thank you.
All right, so now you're seeing the Decoder Pro, right?
Yeah, says need to loco identity and help.
Yep. And if I go ahead and open the preferences window, do you see that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to close that real quick just to recap how I got there. I was just testing it. So you go to Edit and Preferences. And then the first thing you'll see is this Connections. There's defaults and all kinds of other things. So go to your Connections. And this is where you'll pick which system you're going to be running. So in our case, this is NCE, and these other guys will show you their other systems later. And I'll be picking serial because I'm going to be using the serial cable connection. And I need to select a COM port. And the only one available to me right now is COM port 6, so that should work. Then all I have to do is hit save, and it's going to ask me if I want to restart, and you say yes, restart, because none of these changes will take place until you do. So now, if we wait a second, it'll close JMRI and it's going to restart. And once you do, show you the bottom of my screen. You see on the bottom of the screen where it's in green and it says operation mode is online or service mode programmer is online. As long as that's green, you know you're connected. Otherwise, it'll be red and it'll give you a message telling you that you're not connected. So that's one good way to always know if you successfully connected to your command station or not. And if I go back, edit, preferences, you can see that everything looks good here. And if you wanted to add another connection for some reason, say you will have a power cab, you can add another connection here. You have as many different connections as you have different systems you want to connect to JMRI. It's very flexible. You can connect all kinds of things at once, and it'll respect them all. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete these because they're not actually connected to anything.
Keep clicking no.
Yeah. There you go. Anyways, that's where you connect, and I'll show you real quick just the actual hardware connection, and then we'll get into the JMRI. If you really are the Digitrax.
Chris?
Yep.
Can you close some of your windows that you don't need right now? Because your audio just went real scratchy.
Okay.
Got to free up a little bandwidth.
Alright, stop presenting. It's not doing. What are you seeing right now with the camera?
Yeah.
Okay.
Seeing your floor.
Yeah. So underneath here is where I have my command station, and the big white cable you see going up and to the left.
Chris, you still have real scratchy audio.
Okay, let me change that quick. Fire drones are out in force tonight.
Yeah, it's really garbled.
How's that?
That's
Yeah.
good.
Okay. So under here is my command station, and it's temporary home. I haven't mounted it permanently yet. The big white cable running up and to your left is a RS-232 serial cable. That's the old-fashioned type of computer cables before USB came along. So that cable I have running up to the ceiling, and then it comes back down to my temporary connection at the computer here. I'll show you that real quick. So here's the other end of that serial cable, and because my laptop doesn't have a serial port on it, you have to use a USB adapter. And most people are probably going to run into that nowadays because computers really don't come with serial ports on them anymore. So then I bought this key span adapter, and all it does is it adapts the serial cable into a USB, which plugs into the side of my computer right there. It's the silver cable. So that's really all that's to it. It's a very bulletproof connection, especially when you use the straight up serial cable. Just hang it right here. When you use that serial cable straight up, this has been an extremely reliable and bulletproof connection. Adding the USB has been also very good. One caveat: if you go buy a cheap brand of the USB adapter, you may have trouble. The Keyspan adapter has proven to be very reliable, and that's the preferred one to buy for this. So if you're going to go out and buy a cheap one off of eBay, you might have problems. Just make sure you spend a little more, get the good Keyspan, and you know you won't have any problems. So,
How long is your cable?
I think that one's a 50-footer. Because I used to run it way into the other room where I had a desk for the dispatcher. But that's all moving with the new layout now. So
Where can you get the longer serial cables?
I bought that on some website. There's a couple on, just if you Google like cheap serial cable or something like that, there's Cables for Less, I think, is one, and there's a couple of websites that sell really reasonably priced cables, and they're good. I mean, they're not junk so far. The ones I've ordered, I've thought, well, I'll take my chance, try a cheap one first, and if it's garbage, I'll spend more. But I've had good luck buying pretty decent cables at a really good price. I don't think I paid more than $5 or $10 for a 50-foot cable.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, if anybody has any questions at all tonight, just feel free to jump in, or if you're watching on YouTube, type them in there, and we'll be glad to answer any questions you have tonight. Otherwise, as far as NCE is concerned, go ahead and watch last week's if you didn't, because most of your questions will probably be answered. I just did a real quick rehash right now, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tommy with Digitrax and let him give you a good detailed explanation of how to hook it up with the PR3s. Take it away, Tommy.
Yeah, before Tommy takes over, I just want to let everybody know that in the Q&A, the viewers, feel free to type your questions in. I do keep an eye on the question section, and I will interrupt the speaker at appropriate time to get him to answer a question for you. So feel free to use the Q&A tonight, because we got some good panelists for answering. All right, Tommy, the show's all yours.
All right, here I am. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you fine.
All right, so my name's Tommy. I'm coming from just north of Chicago, and want to talk a little bit about Digitrax and some different products that Digitrax offers or have had offered in the past. A couple moments about myself. I don't want to bore everybody, but I do have a YouTube channel. It's the same as my handle and username that's here in the Hangouts. It's Tommy, TOMMIE022481. I do all kinds of install videos, a lot of it with Digitrax, some of it with other brands, Loc Sound or Soundtracks and some of the other stuff that's out there. But tonight we're going to talk about Digitrax. I'm going to flip the camera on here real quick so y'all can see me. And here I am. Here's my ugly mug. So basically, unfortunately, we're getting ready to put the house up on the market. So my layout is not here. It's down. And so I kind of went through a couple of boxes tonight and got some stuff out. And I'll flip the camera around. So I got all my props I want to talk about. And I'll get in some detail there. And this is I know maybe a little bit awkward not being a screen share, but there's the YouTube channel. But tonight we're talking about Digitrax, like I said. So Digitrax has offered a lot of different products. This is their website. They've got DCC command stations. They've got stationary decoders, mobile decoders, sound decoders, things to operate signals and switches and all kinds of good stuff. But among that, they have programming stations. The one we're going to talk about tonight is the Digitrax PR3. Actually, there it is shown right there on the scrolling marquee of the website. To go back a little bit, the name PR3 meant that there was a PR1, which was much more than I'm not sure what kind of interface that was in a in a diskette, just given the age of some of the technology. Then they went to a PR2, which was a serial cable that we were just looking at in the JMRI section, and it came with an adapter and a CD for some software. And you can still find some of these on YouTube, not YouTube, but eBay and even the hobby store I go to. Actually, there's a couple of these in stock because well, nobody wants them anymore because they're on the PR3 and now the PR3 Extra, which is basically the same thing. They made a couple of updates for instead of the light speed LEDs or bulbs, they're LEDs. It comes with a power supply now. They run about somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 to 80 bucks. You might be able to find them cheaper at some of the other retailers or online. And here is the actual unit there. Basically, it has only a couple different parts to it. There's an area for a USB cable. There's an area for track leads, and there's an area here in the back for a power supply and LocoNet. Now, LocoNet is Digitrax's, I guess you can call it proprietary way of hooking up all of their various components. So if we look at their command station, it'll also have a LocoNet port. And this is my little handy dandy box that I use to make my wireless portable, but there's also a LocoNet port on the front, and you're probably not going to be able to see, but there's also several here in the rear. Looks like the camera's picking it up okay. And although this one's in a box, this is meant to be planted somewhere in the foundation of the, not the foundation, but the soffit, or fascia rather, of the layout. Strategic places wherever makes sense. And LocoNet can be used, like I mentioned here, you can have your Digitrax PR3 talk to your command station. You can have your command station talk to your access panels. And move this off to the side a little bit. This is the Digitrax DT402 wireless throttle, but you'll see there it also has a LocoNet cable. Now, to talk about the cable itself, you can get these for a couple of bucks at Menards. Now, this looks like a regular Ethernet cable, but it is not. This is actually an RJ12 connector, and they're both male ends, so both male ends on both sides of the wire. And you can make your own by getting, I think it's 6-strand wire, if I remember right. And you can get a package of 50 of these from online eBay for $2-3 bucks. As long as you got a crimping tool, you can get that at Radio Shack. You can get that again online. You can make your own cable, but it's not an Ethernet cable. Even though it looks like one, it's an RJ12 cable, and that's really what's used to hook Digitrax up. Now, if you have Digitrax, you probably know this already, but just a quick review of kind of how some of this works. But the next part of this is, I'm going to move some of this out of the way here. Since the topic is JMRI, we're going to have this talk to JMRI. And what I have here is a regular USB cable. Now, I'm not going to show you the other end where the computer's at because I think that's pretty self-explanatory. This basically plugs into, and hopefully I can do it one-handed here. And I got to put it down. Bear with me just a moment, folks. There we go. Sorry about that. And as soon as I plugged it in, I get a read from the PR3, basically saying that it's on and it's ready to be used. The PR3 does come with a power supply, and I put that down here. It is, like I showed you in the picture here, and that's what this is right here. Now, the power supply is not required. If you want to use the PR3 as a standalone programmer on a layout, we'll get to that at some point down the road. But meaning I can use this PR3 to power locomotives on a layout versus using it on a computer and using JMRI, that's what this would be used for. You can still use it. It won't hurt anything if you have it plugged in and the USB, but it's just simply not required. So once I have that in here, it looks something like this. And if we go to the computer screen, I'm going to go ahead and open up my mouse, JMRI. And you'll see the little logo there open up there in the middle. And it gave me a COM port here. I'll explain that in a moment. So just like we looked at the MRC application a moment ago, we're going to look at preferences. Now, the first time you go to plug in your PR3 or really any of these programmers, it's going to prompt you with a window like this. If it doesn't, you can do the same thing. You can go up to the top here to edit preferences, just like we did with the JMRI a moment ago. It'll get you the same place. Now, I happen to have LocalNet set up, but to walk through that process, we'll just create a new connection. You can do as fewer, as many of these as you want. It's all the different types of things that are out there. Here's mine, Digitrax, PR3, and again, the PR2 and some of the other things that are up there that I mentioned before are available. But we're going to go to PR3, which is also the default. The port, this one gives me an option of 1 and 3. It's a little trial and error. If one doesn't work, if it gives you more than one, then try the other one. And you can kind of go from there. So once that's set, you can save it. And restart, again, just like we did before. Now, one thing I want to note, I originally had this set up, and it's probably giving me error because I have now 2 Digitraxes on here. But one thing I want to note is if you have a laptop and you're using, and I don't have one here, you're using a one of those multi-USB type connectors. Yeah, so you got one USB on one side and you got 2, 3, 4 USB on the other side. It does tend to jump what COM port it's going to use. So you fire it up one day, you get it set to COM port 1. You turn the computer off, you come back to it tomorrow, you go to look at, you turn the computer back on and says, oh, it's not here because today it's COM port 3. It just depends on how it wants to read it. So I would shy away from using those when you're using the Digitrax software, unless you want, otherwise you run into having to reset your COM port every time you go to use it. Is it a big deal? Not really, but just something to keep in mind. So that's basically hooking it up to, the JMRI software, going through the setup. Now, this is PR3 to computer, and you'll notice that there's two little screw heads here that will go out to a program track. And that's, again, the primary purpose. There's a program side of this for programming on a program track, and then there's a, running a layout side of this, which gets talked about a little bit later. So two screw heads goes to a program track. I just happen to have an Atlas piece of flex track here. I recommend being consistent with your layout, black and red, being your primary colors for a DCC system. That would go from here to your track. Now, one of the things that I did do at my layout is I had another one of my props here. I had a distribution box here, and basically you can get these at Radio Shack. These are blocks, and I have a little bus that runs along here, and I have a little cut here in half so I can separate the polarity. I had red on this block of 8 and black on this block of 8. But basically what I did was you can have the black and red wires from here go to a bus, and you can go out to a number of different areas within a layout. You could have tracks on the layout that are dedicated for programming. You could have a track on the layout and one off the layout, maybe on a workbench somewhere for programming. And I had both of those, and I had this panel. This is just something I got at Radio Shack. And I did the same thing with my command station, which is a DB150, which is, again, this guy here. And I had a way to actually take these wires. I'm not going to be able to do one-handed, but be able to plug in this is actually meant for a speaker wire, speaker box, push that in, plug the wire in here, had alligator clips on the other end, and be able to test and troubleshoot locomotives, with the PR3 or with, whatever that was with a box like this. So I know there's a lot there, guys. I'll flip the camera back around here. And at the same time, I know it's kind of an introduction. We just kind of turned on the JMRI. I showed you the components. Here's how you plug it in. In some cases, depending on where you're at in modeling, it might be a lot, it may not be a lot. So were there, any questions with what we have so far?
No, not yet. So once you get those basic settings done for your PR3, then everything else for the JMRI is just your basic stuff for any system. It's all the same.
Correct. It'll look at it doesn't care if it's a Sprock or if it's a Digitrax or any of the other systems that are out there. Once you get beyond the initial setup, it pretty much works the same.
Yeah. Okay. So those are basically the settings you need right there when you're first coming in to JMRI with the system.
And when we get to Sprock here in a little bit, we should see pretty much the same type of thing.
Okay, so what do you have to set on the PR3 if you're just going to use it on a programming track with a JMRI? Or does it already know because of the way it's plugged up?
Well, like I showed before, once you get the, once you do the initial setup, like we showed a moment ago, and you save it, it knows that it's there as a connection. There's really nothing beyond that's required.
Oh, okay. Because you said there's a programming side and then there's a run mode side to the PR3. I didn't know if you had a soft switch to flip it between the two, or it just already knows by whatever commands you're doing which way to go.
That brings up a good point. So what I used is a double pole, double throw, center off switch. Again, you can get any hardware store, Radio Shack, whatever. And maybe if you guys give me a sec here, I could probably pull one up online so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And basically, you don't want to run the PR3 with your command station on the same circuit. So if I had this, piece of track here, and if I had a PR3 connected to this side and had it on, and I had the command station set up on that side. I turn it on. You're going to melt your PR3, and I can say that with confidence because I did it. And hang on,
Yeah,
so I'm going to pull up.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the question. Yeah, the double pole, double throw with the center off, that means once you get it wired up, if you flip it up, that puts you on your main line. And if you flip it all the way down, that would be your programming track with the center position off, where you have neither programming or main line from the PR3.
Right, so I just pull one up here online real quick, and that's what this is showing. And I know you only can see 3 sides, but there are 3 prongs. There's really 6. There's 3 on each side.
Yeah.
So what I would have is the, let's say, for example, the top, I had the command station coming in. The middle one went out to your track,
Right.
and then the bottom one went to, the programmer. So programmer in, command station in, and then out to track, and then the switch would, tell you which way you're going. So if you had a up position, you're on your command station. Down, you're on, your programmer, and center off. You don't have to get the center off. You can just do one or the other. Center off is just kind of a nice feature for, a buck more or whatever it is in a switch.
Yeah, it's a good safety feature there, so that way you are off either way. Yeah, it's a definite off there. But you do have to, if you're using the programming track in the main line, that does have to be isolated, right, at both ends.
Yes, like the same type of thing. So what you would do is, if you have your track, now I've got a regular rail joiner on here now, but you'd get a set of isolated ones to go on here, and then you could do the same type of thing. You can use your double pole, double throw switch to turn this, so let's say you had a turnout coming into this, and your main was, wherever, or your part of the yard was wherever, and you could have a double pole, double throw switch that said, okay, right now this is, layout operation, switch in position A, and then you bring your locomotive onto here, and you flip your switch. Okay, now this is program track, and I can use my programmer to do whatever it is I want to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do that as well. One thing that I saw somebody on YouTube do that I thought was pretty ingenious, they had a small section of track next to it. So when it was in layout mode, the small section of track and this track was on. Locomotive would drive onto it, no problem. When we went to the program track section, this became program track. The small section of track was dead. And what that would do, that would prevent, let's pretend this is a locomotive, if this was by chance partway on one circuit and partway on the other circuit, even though you have rail joiners here, you got a wheel set here, you got a wheel set there, guess what? You're on both circuits, and well, like I said, I melted a Digitrax PR3 once, so
Yeah.
I'm sure it wouldn't be very healthy for a locomotive.
Yeah, you'll get a short on it.
We always use a switch and a sighting. So when you throw your double pole, double throw switch over, you're actually activating the sighting, and you can still run your main line.
That's correct. Yeah, that works out really well that way.
And I'd also recommend Joe Fugate of Motorera Hobbyist fame has a really excellent tutorial on isolating programming track and putting that switch in with a lot of detail to go into. Shows how to create that dead section track on, if you have a single siding, you have that dead section on one end. In his case, he had a through track, so he had a programming section in the middle, a small dead section on either side, so like Tommy mentions, if your locomotive spans that gap, it can also, also span the programming to the operational main line and ultimately short your circuit out. So just for your reference, if you want to get into a lot of detail, Joe Fugate has a video on Trainmasters TV, I believe, yeah, on Trainmasters TV way back in the old stuff that he recently put up, again, that's years old. He has a detailed description on how to create that wiring schematic and how to wire that up with all the little intricate details.
Yeah. You're muted, Tommy.
I was trying to be nice there. So that's that's all pretty good stuff. Is there any other questions?
No, we don't have any in the Q&A. If any of the viewers do have any questions, type them into the Q&A, and we'll get them to Tommy or Chris or, you know, Andy, any of them here on the panel that can answer them. So put your questions up there. What else can you help us out on Digitrack hookups there with the
Well,
JMR?
Digitrax is, getting off of, this gets off of JMRI a little bit, but as far as Digitrax, you can program on the main, using the, I'm going to flip the camera back on here real quick and flip it around. Hopefully, let's see if I can get it, there we go. Just somewhat on topic, but kind of off JMRI, this is the throttle, and I've added a switch. Those of you that already use Digitrax, you'll notice that they typically don't come with the switch. I actually got this idea from a guy that most of you guys know from YouTube called Monster Railroader, Big Al Mayo, and that certainly helps with. You know what? I'm not plugged into an active command station, so I'm not going to be able to get it off idle there. But there's a program key that's right here, so you can program on the main. You don't necessarily have to get the Digitrax PR3, but the programming is just CVs only. So that's just a little side note. Can you program outside of a PR3? Yes, but all you're doing is programming CVs.
Yeah, some people. Yeah,
no,
some people have found out it's not a good idea to program on the main when you got a 6, 8, 10 locomotives sitting there, because if you make a mistake, you're going to program them all the same.
It can be dangerous, but it's also really handy to do the one thing that programming on the main is invaluable for: controlling sound volumes. The one thing you may not know exactly what volume you need on your locomotive until it's out on the layout running, and that's one thing that is very easy to ops mode or program on the main change, is to change that core sound volume or whistle or bell sound and change the CV for the volume. That's something I quite commonly do on the main.
I also use it all the time for speed matching, setting the speed tables and
yep.
With JMRI, with JMRI running and programming on the main, I quickly adjust my speed tables and reprogram it, and that's how I do my speed matching.
It's a lot easier if you can stretch out a 20-foot section of track as opposed to that little couple feet of the siding they have for the decoder programming. So ops mode programming is invaluable, but Johnny brings up a valid point that you need to know. You need to learn how to use that correctly, and not try to don't think that you can just do everything on the main, because you can't do everything anyway. You can't read back values back into it. You can only make changes, or at least for every one of them I know of. I think there may be some support in Digitrax for reading back, but I can't read back. And it can be dangerous. I mean, it's not dangerous in that you're going to burn the house down or something, but you can lose some of your settings. That brings back a real big point. Is I'm a computer guy anyway, so my tendency is to tell you to back stuff up. I mean, I preach that to my clients. I'm going to preach it to you. It's something I mentioned in last week's show, is how to go back up your JMRI configuration so you can go change anything that you want to change and play around with it. And if you don't like the settings, just restore from your little export or your backup, and you're right back where you were an hour ago before you messed up the world. You can do the same thing with decoders, and you can back up a decoder profile and save the entire configuration. Now that's really handy so that you can go make changes, and if you don't like the results, you can revert. But where that really is if you have a dozen SD40-2s, you can set up one profile that has all the sounds and volumes and lighting controls and everything you like about that locomotive, and save that profile and push it to all of your other locomotives. It will save you an invaluable amount of time if you have way too many locomotives like most of us do.
Question.
Go.
All right, so when you program the CVs, it's accessing the address for that engine and knowing to change that CV on that engine.
Yep.
How does it jump to a different engine with a different address?
Well, if you're just changing CVs, it's not a problem. It's when it's like, okay, and really where people have run into problems are when they're trying to write decoder values, and it's not uncommon. Actually, I think Dude might have done this once. Is he wiped out every locomotive that was on his layout and set them every one with the same decoder address.
He did. He did.
Yeah.
I did that before too.
So that's the one thing you have to be worried about. Now, just changing the value of an individual CV on a identified or on a decoder that has an address assigned to it, that's safe. That's fine. Just be aware that you can wipe out, or you can set every decoder on your layout to a single address if you have the power to do that. It's possible.
The way that usually happens is when you have the toggle switch in the wrong position.
Yep.
Let's say you have your toggle switch set to back to your track, and this is why I'm an advocate of a separate programming track that's not part of your layout. If you set that back to layout and then you go ahead and tell your command station to program on the programming track, it'll now take that programming track, send that through the toggle switch, and you'll program every locomotive on your layout to whatever you just told it to program.
Yep. So you have to be careful about the position of that switch. That's entirely possible. And it's not it's a really better arrangement to have a piece of flex track, lay it on your table, set that in a chair, and do all the basic programming of hard coding, addresses, etc. in your locomotives, restoring profiles, all that stuff, and then put it up on the layout to change the individual CVs. The one thing you can't do on your layout, though, is read back values. So once you get everything set on a locomotive, you've got to bring your locomotive back to a programming track so that you can pull all those CVs, all those settings back into JMRI if you needed to pull them back into it for some reason, or to create a profile that you want to copy to a bunch of locomotives, for example.
And I've done that. I've created, especially with some of the Digitrax, the SFX series, where I've I've set up a couple of different templates that I was able to mass produce into other locomotives that work really well. One of the neat things about using JMRI and in decoders in general is most sound decoders come as one decoder. Function, light, sound, the whole thing one decoder, which is really convenient. It's one price point, yada yada yada. So what Digitrax offers, not that you couldn't do this with other manufacturers, is they do have a series of decoders where you're really purchasing two decoders. Now what's nice about that is you can buy the mobile decoder, first, if let's say it's a price point, if you're like about $25 or so, and you can go back and add the sound decoder portion to it later, which is really a plug and play. You take the shell off, it actually plugs right into the first decoder you put in there, and they run in tandem. So you can do your sound part later. Now what's neat about Digitrax and LokeSound's doing this too is you can program your own sounds into it, and you can use JMRI to help you doing some of that, and you can program your mobile decoder in one fashion and your sound decoder another fashion. So I could set my momentum and my mobile decoder to go accelerate at this rate. You know what I mean? And set a top end speed at whatever that is, and I can tell my sound decoder, let's just say I'm a passenger engine. I'm in Chicago, so we got Metro engines, and they're constantly running in notch 8. Some of the newer MP36s, they're running in either notch 4 or notch 8. Speed step 1, go to notch 8. I mean, you can do stuff like that very easily. Or on the flip side, I know a lot of decoders kind of have this built into it now. Stay in notch 1 until I reach speed step 3. Just run at. I'm saying stay in notch 1 until speed step 3, and then go to notch 2. So it simulates the engineer has released the brake, the engine started to move, but it hasn't kicked up to notch 2 or whatever that is. So there's some neat things you can do with that. You can program templates in a JMRI and reproduce that as a starting point on the locomotives as you get through them.
Yeah, and that brings up a point of something that's way beyond probably what we want to talk about, but just to emphasize what you're doing, one of the most popular movements in accurate prototype recreation of layouts with regard to sound and DCC is in notch control. So there's a lot of people who have been doing manual notching, where you don't just turn the speed up with a rheostat or a knob, and the train just goes through its paces. Because on the real railroad, that's not how they operate. So if an engineer has a couple locomotives in a yard, and he's shoving cars. He is not going notch 1, notch 2, notch 3, notch 4, and then going back down to 3, 2, 1 as he speeds up, slows down. He is going up to 8, push for just a second, pull it back down to 0, and let it coast. Go up to notch 8, back down to 0. That's how they're doing that. And to recreate that effect, it's required a lot of manual control with function keys on a decoder to create that. But with manual notching, you can control some of that stuff. And my opinion is that with the separated sound decoder, being able to write its own CV values like you're doing, Tommy, would probably let us get even closer to that without having to manually make that possible. Because there's a few things, the yard operations is one of them, but on my layout, something that's quite common is for them to coast locomotives. Where the train's still running, it still needs to have voltage pushed to the motor of the locomotive to actually pull cars down the track. But where on the real thing, it would be coasting. So they would turn it back down to notch 0 and coast. And the only way to do that is use function keys to do that. I'd only set them like F7 and F8, I think.
Yeah, so there's, Digitrax has one where it's just designed to run 2 decoders at a time, but, let's just take, Soundtrax, for example. Now they got a new, what do they call it, Econotrax or something, or
Economy.
Economy, thank you. So, it's a lesser price point, so you can get, and again, thinking about the amount of space you have in a locomotive, so doing this on a little switcher might be a little tough, but, keeping space in mind, you could get their N scale, small little mobile decoder, which is the size of a dime, you know what I mean? And get an economy sound decoder, if you can make them both fit in there, you can run them as, 2 different decoders as we just talked about. You get the 2 of those, it's going to be the same price as a Tsunami, 1 decoder. And like I said, using JMRI, you can set a base platform and start the work from there. You can have a base platform for a Tsunami, have a base platform for Loc Sound, a base platform, or multiple base platforms for Digitrax, and so on and so forth. And what I have here, I'm going to flip the camera back on here real quick and flip it around. Hopefully all right, here's me. Let's flip that around. And hopefully y'all can see it. Now this is just, a quick glimpse of JMRI. This is the sound settings, portion of this. I know we'll get into more depth, down the road. There's sound settings. I just pulled up a Tsunami. I think it's F7 or something like that. There's some different things you can do with sound on here. But just, I think everyone can pretty much read that and understand, you got a master volume, you got a air horn volume, bell volume, and so on and so forth. What everyone refers to diesel exhaust is just, the recorded sound of the prime mover. And, to go with this is you would go and you'd have your sound decoder and you would program your sounds. And like we talked about, you could take it to the layout, do some tweaking, and, if needed. And, and if you have a platform set, then you can have a good starting point. It'll have some default settings on here, or what default is on the decoder itself. And then when you go to program, up front you just have the decoders on 2 different addresses. So one is maybe the default address 3 that comes with most decoders, and then one's the actual road number of the locomotive or whatever shortcut that you guys use. And then once you really get them dialed in, well, actually even before you do that, then you run them as a MU, a multiple unit, on the layout, do some testing, and then once you're pretty confident what you got, then you program both as the same address. Now, even if you program them both as the same address up front, typically you're controlling mobile and light functions with the mobile and the sound with the other. So even if you have them both programmed at the same address, it really shouldn't matter unless you're using 2 different manufacturers where you may have some CVs, mean one thing on decoder A and mean something else on decoder B. I know we're kind of getting a little bit more advanced than our intro right now, but just something to keep in mind. But that's basically what we can do with this, and the possibilities are really endless.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you got anything else there, Tommy?
No, I think I covered way more than I was supposed to for an intro series.
I got a question for you, Tommy.
Sure.
Local buffer by RR Circuits, that's the equivalent of a PR3. Do you have any experience with that? And from what I've read, and I'm not a Digitrax user, but I've been considering putting in a local net for my signaling and block occupancy detection, and they say that the local buffer is more robust and more reliable than the PR3. Is that true?
I have not experienced it. I've only used the PR3. We were talking a little bit offline, before the show started, and it, I've had good luck with the PR3. Have I really pushed it to the higher limits of using, some of the signaling stuff? No, I haven't. I've seen a lot of other folks use Digitrax and use. I'm trying to think of what NS Modeler 24. If you guys don't know NS Modeler 24, he's now
Yep.
got a really really nice YouTube channel, and I know he was using some other aftermarket accessories in conjunction with the Digitrax, because he uses Digitrax as well to make all his signals and block detection work.
Yeah, there's a lot of different boards for the local net for signaling and that, but the local buffer, and this might be good for the audience that's listening, the local buffer is a direct replacement for the PR3. It's an aftermarket thing that does exactly the same as the PR3. You would use it instead of the PR3.
When it does a little bit more than that too, is that guys like us that do not have Digitrax, that I'm a Sprague, you're NCE, that do not have Digitrax and do not have a local buffer, something that speaks the local net protocol, that device from our circuits will let us emulate having a LocoNet connection for signaling systems. And I'm thinking about using one as well, and I've read nothing but good things about them. They rave about them.
Yeah, that's the same thing I've read, that people who use them say they just blow the PR3 out of the water. So
Yep.
The PR3 has, even though this is the PR3 Extra and it came out, I don't know, a year, maybe it's 2 years ago now, it's aged a little bit. I mean, it was great. Like I showed in the beginning of the show, we have PR1, PR2, PR3. I expect at some point to see a PR4 of some type, or whatever they decide to call it. Everything's evolved and moved on. The PR3 was a great tool, and it was one of the, I think, either the first or one of the first of its kind for quite some time. Others have caught on, and they're doing all kinds of other stuff now. So, do you like Ford? Do you like Chevy? Do you like Pepsi? Do you like Coke? I mean, it's, this guy's going to come out with a newer one that's going to do a little bit more. The next guy's going to come out with a newer one that's going to do a little bit more. So, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I like Chevy and Coke, but my question is, what's the cost comparison of that new one you guys are talking about compared to the PR3?
Well, I know the PR3 cost, they're usually under $80, between $70 and $80. I'd have to look up what.
yeah, the local buffer is comparably priced, if not just a little less from last time I looked up, which was almost a year ago. So.
Yeah, I think I was seeing it for 70 or maybe 60, 59.69. So actually, I think it's a little cheaper.
Yeah, I had a number like 64.95 or something in my head, but I couldn't tell you 100% certainty.
And especially what I understand about that is that it's the best device, especially if you do not have a Digitrax system, and that you want to emulate LocoNet on NCE or Lens or any other manufacturer other than Digitrax. That's where that device really excels.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. We've kind of coming up on the halfway point here. I want to take a moment and do a little halfway announcement on this, and let's see here. You think this is my first time doing this, way I keep messing up. Why aren't you, I guess it'd help if I turn my camera on, huh? Can y'all see the screen, or you just see me?
Just you.
Just me.
Yeah, that's you.
All right, let me do this again here. This not being Thursday night's got me messed up. Quit jumping. All right, I guess everybody's seeing the screen now. Tuesday night hangouts are the proud sponsor of the YouTube Model Builders, the EMAG, and the YouTube Builders live show. The website is YouTubeModelBuilders.com. You can go to the website. You'll see a schedule for all the Tuesday night presentations. Each one has a different topic and a different person moderating that. Dude, Troy, Gino, and Barry, all four of them are doing presentations each month, so each one has a week in every month. Any extra weeks, Stu takes those and presents something else. You can also go there, sign up for the e-magazine. You'll get notifications in your email when it comes out, so you go download it. It's in a PDF format, so that you can read it on pretty much any device now. And the YouTube Mall Builders live show. The schedules are there also. That's usually ran on every Thursday of the month. Third Saturday of the month. You can tell I'm out of my element here, talking Thursdays. So anyway, that's the end of the mid-show point, and I guess now Tommy's finished his. Well, Andy, you were going to talk about the Sprague.
Yeah, it's a fairly brief conversation, really. So, most people are familiar with NCE, Digitrax, Lens, possibly Bachmann, which doesn't connect to JMRI, MRC. There's those key big player manufacturers that have been in DCC for a while. The Sprague has started gaining some popularity, and I got into it for the same reason that a lot of people did, just as a programmer. So my goal was to get it, hook it to a piece of flex track on my workbench, and start programming locomotives ahead of having them operational on my layout. And then I started to realize that I could run them on my layout, run it using the throttle built into JMRI on a computer, which is definitely less than ideal to sit here at the desk and run trains, not for an operational walk-around layout. However, I started out with my phone. The Y-throttle app for your phone is incredible. The iPhone 6 Plus was a little large, so I went and bought 3 of the most recent generation iPods. It's perfect for a single-hand operation, has the throttle on it. It's really responsive. Now, you can do this with any JMRI-enabled DCC system. So NCE, Digitrax, Lens, doesn't matter. You can run the Y-throttle and have it control your trains. I prefer this to anything else. So once I started liking this, I started thinking about just using the Sprague. Now, the Sprague by itself I'm using a Sprague 3. That was the latest and greatest. It's still the latest and greatest, but it was the latest and greatest when I bought it some months ago or a year ago. And it has 2.5 watts, I believe, of power, 2.5 amps of power available, which is enough for a couple locomotives for a small layout. So one thing that I've encouraged people to consider is if you have a small shelf layout, you're not going to run more than a couple trains at a time, or a 4x8 or some kind of starter layout. A Sprague is everything you will need, and then just use an Android phone with a piece of software called Engine Driver, or an iPhone or iPod or iPad. They have an iPad version that has 2 throttle bars on it, so you can run 2 locomotives at once. That's pretty awesome. I've liked using that arrangement so well that I've steered clear of buying a more advanced DCC system. I don't want a throttle. I like the iPod, so I was going to buy an NCE system and just use the Sprague for programming. So now I'm using only the Sprague. Now there's not that much to it, but I'm going to do a screen share and show you my simple arrangement. It's the same thing as what they have, but just since everybody else has, in preferences, you have a connection. It's like everybody else. Now, I use a couple of different connections in here. I use the Raspberry Pis. I'll show you one of those in a second. And I use the JMRI over a network connection because I run JMRI on multiple computers and have them talk to each other. But I have a Sprague. It, like all the rest of them, ultimately emulates a serial connection. The Sprague, or at least the Sprague 3, the early Spragues did have serial ports on them. The Sprague 3 has a direct USB cable. So it is just a little block or box and a USB cable. That's why I didn't pull it out and show it on the camera. There's no point. It's a little block with a USB cable to it. It's trivial. But it emulates serial on your computer. And I'm running a Mac, as you can see, but And that's another point about JMRI is that ultimately, once you have it installed, it runs the same on Linux, Mac, or Windows. I run it on Linux and on Mac. Mac is my primary system. It's where my CTC dispatching and signal controls and operations and all that happens from this system. I do have several other systems running Linux that talk back to this single system. JMRI running on them as well. They have to be running the version, but they're running and they provide some functionality that's more advanced than the initial talk. So anyway, that's it. That's all there is to it. Sprague DCC. Don't you use the command station other than just the base Sprague. One other thing I want to show while I have a screen share is the Spragues themselves. That's it. It's a small little interface. It has 4 terminal connection blocks on it. 2 of those for track power, 2 of those for programming track, and a USB interface. That's it. There's no more to it than that. They also sell a booster that you can use to extend the Sprague 2 here, or the Sprague 3 like I have, and have multiple power districts or blocks to get more power. It's an additional 2.5 amps of power. However, I favor the Tam Valley booster. It's 5 amps of power. It's cheap. I don't remember how much, 40, 50 bucks. But the Tam Valley booster is awesome, and it speaks standard DCC. So you can use a Tam Valley booster on an NCE or Digitrax or whatever system. So I'm using a Sprague right now. I'm using it on my programming track and on my short, 30 foot or so of layout I have right now. As I extend the layout on multiple decks, I'm going to buy a Tam Valley. Actually, I have one here in a box somewhere, a Tam Valley booster, so that I can extend and have more power coverage and run more trains at once.
So, Andy, is that amperage cumulative, or does the 5 amp replace, let's say, the 2.5 that it comes with? If you put a booster on, does it become 7.5 or 5?
Well, it would be like a block. So you would have a 2.5 section that you could hook to a track and a 5 section you could hook to a track. So you could have a 2.5 amp power block, which is what I'm doing, and you can have 5 amp power blocks. So what I'm going to do is let the 2.5 run my staging and then have 5 amp power blocks. It'll have this will be a 4-deck layout eventually. So the top 2 decks will be 1 power district with a 5 amp booster, and the bottom.
Okay, so adding a booster doesn't disable the 2.5 and then just replace it with 5 amp?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, it will replace. The 5 amp is what it is. It's not a cumulative. It's a straight 5 amp.
Yeah,
You can replace the 2.5 with it, or use it like Andy does in 2 separate sections.
Okay, because I know like the NCE's power cap system, if you add the smart booster, it becomes the amperage of the booster and no longer the amperage that was in the handheld.
well,
Right. You can parallel NCE boosters, though, and get up to 10 amps.
Well, sure, and you can also do power districts too.
Exactly.
I favor power districts. I favor power districts, and actually, I favor running just more base stations as opposed to actual boosters in my arrangement. But I'm not. I have a booster, so I'm going to hook it up. My understanding is that you can still use the 2.5 amps of power driven to one block and then take the 5 amp power and drive it to another district. That's my understanding.
Andy, to change gears on you real quick,
Yep.
as we're talking about hardware, you're using some sort of a Wi-Fi router to use the iPads for your throttles?
Yeah, and I put a dedicated access point in. I have an Airport Extreme AC that runs the house, Apple TVs, laptops, all that kind of stuff. Because of the number of devices that I had, I decided to put in just a wireless access point. In my case, I put an Apple Airport Extreme or Airport Express. Made it just wireless to the layout, and my 3 iPods and stuff. Yeah.
Hang on just for a second. Hey, Bill, can you mute your mic, please? I'm getting an echo from you. Thank you.
In my case, I put up a dedicated access point. Now, if you have a small home network that doesn't have a whole lot of stuff on it, I mean, we have like 5 Apple TVs and multiple laptops, and I mean, I'm an IT guy, okay? So hardware is a prerequisite. I carry 2 or 3 laptops with me all the time. So I wanted to make sure that the wireless for the railroad was dedicated to the railroad. And for most people, I think that's a good idea. I mean, a wireless access point's cheap. You can buy one for $30 or $40 off of Amazon. I like the idea of having a dedicated wireless access point. It's on my main network, but my 3 iPods and iPad Mini and stuff connect just to that wireless to talk to JMRI.
Yeah, I use an Android phone on mine with an engine driver. It works great.
And I would have to say that right now, wide throttle versus engine driver. Engine driver is a more advanced application. And there are, I use wide throttle because I'm an Apple guy. And it works great as a throttle. Now, as I start getting into more advanced stuff like accessory control and turnout control, hopefully by then, there's a new throttle application being built right now. For Android and iPhone, it will be a single application that will run on both, that has the turnout control and control panels and all that other advanced functionality available to us iOS or Mac users or Apple users, as well as the Android people. But I'm also seeing people, I'm trying to think, what's that guy's name? I'll think of it in a second. But Mike Deverall, Colorado Front Range Railroad, has another example of a great YouTube channel. Tommy's mentioned people with great YouTube channels. That's a great YouTube channel. He went to Walmart or something and bought $30 prepaid Android cell phones and didn't put a plan on them. Connect them to the Wi-Fi, run engine driver on them, you have a $30 throttle. Perfect. Does everything you need.
You can do better than that even. I got one for $15.
Yep.
On sale at Target once. Yeah, just don't activate a plan on them.
That's a lot better because these are like $229. So they're not cheap, and I bought 3 of these bad boys. But again, I'm an Apple guy, so it's my tendency to buy Apple stuff. But you don't have to. Android, Apple, whatever. Ultimately, it works the same.
You could get probably first generation, iPod touches, with 8 gigs, whatever came on eBay for next to nothing now. I mean,
Sure.
You can probably put a little bit of music on there too.
Absolutely. Actually, there's some really cool things that are happening in that space with the virtual sound driver, to where you can put earbuds in off from this thing and get the sound effects. JMRI will feed the sound effects from your locomotive through these earbuds, so you can hear your train that you're running without disturbing everybody in the house. That's really kind of, fringe use and not ready for prime time yet, but it's available. It's happening.
Well, what fun is that if you ain't disturbing the family with your train fun?
Exactly.
At 3 o'clock in the morning.
Make them walls.
Yeah. Dave, you got any questions for these guys? I know you're right there in the very beginning trying to get yours set up.
Yeah, I can't get my locomotive to move at all.
Well, I've got my power cab set up. If Jim wanted to see his power cab set up, I could go through that if you guys are looking for something else to do.
Yeah, Dave said he's having problem getting his running. I guess y'all want to try and help him get it running.
It's running, all the sound and functions work, it just don't move.
Now this, Andy, you mentioned the headphones, and I thought about something, really long time ago, and I never got a chance to do it, and it kind of ties into JMRI a little bit, and I know that Broadway Limited just introduced their Thunderbox, whatever that was.
Paragraph 3.
And I came up with an idea, and I never did it, so I'm gonna tell you guys about it. Get an old set of computer speakers, and really what you're interested in is a subwoofer.
Yep.
And take a Digitrax, Soundbug or something, put in a JMRI, put a bass. I don't care what sound project, because you're just interested in the bass anyway, and you can use JMRI to tweak the CVs and things I was showing on the screen a little while ago, and basically plug that decoder into what would be the headphone jack of that, the 2mm jack of what would be the the computer speaker, you have the volume control right there. You could put probably in your fascia or something, but basically you could have the base of a horn, the base of a prime mover or steam engine, with a single decoder, set it as an MU, to whatever decoder address you wanted, and be able to have a base subwoofer somewhere strategically placed under the layout to kind of add to the volume of whatever the small, decoder was playing on a small speaker inside of the locomotive.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. So there's a couple of points there. There's a lot of people have been doing that in scale stations. I'm doing something fairly similar. I have not got into the electronics part of it just yet. I've been experimenting and playing, but I've not truly got into it. But I built my layout. All the construction so far on my layout is designed for under-track speed. Not for the sound. I don't want the sound from the locomotive coming because I want wheel squeal and brake noise. And I'm putting speakers every 18 inches, and I have every section of rail electrically isolated with lock occupancy on every section of rail, so I can detect where the train's going to have speakers. Again, I haven't built these other than the rail sections of it, but I'm probably going to be using a Soundtrack sound card and using a switching circuit to switch it from speaker to speaker to speaker to do a similar thing. But man, the capability with sound is
that's a great idea.
and it's not that hard to do. And all I did is my layout's built out of styrofoam, and I built a trench or trough 2 inches deep under my roadbed. So my roadbed sits on top of a little 2-inch trough, and my wiring goes in there, and servos can drop down in there, and it gives me room to work without having a bunch of wiring hanging underneath the layout because I don't have a wooden substructure. It's entirely styrofoam. So it lets all my wiring stay in that trough, but I'm putting speakers in there ever so often as well. And I was originally going to use a company called Pricom that makes ambient sound effects and stuff like that, but there was no way to speed match it to the speed of the locomotive to get proper click, click, click sounds or breakdown sounds that were anywhere close to associated to the speed of the train. So I've settled on getting a sound car decoder and doing it that way, and I'm still working on that. But I've already put a lot of effort into making it possible, and my layout is specifically designed to have that functionality. And I think sound is one of the things, like the manual notching we were talking about. That doesn't affect motor control. Motor control and back EMF and those advanced functions of motor control, those are pretty solid. They haven't changed a lot. Sound is one of the, there's 2 areas of DCC that are just blowing up right now. Sound is still blowing up. We're still trying to do a lot of things to prototypically match what happens in the real world versus the way our electric motors have to function. And ambient sounds and track sounds. And Paragon 3 is incredible. I mean, sadly, I just recently bought 2 Paragon 2, $600 articulated locomotives, and then they dropped Paragon 3 on us. But I am
Yeah.
But Wow Sound or TCS Wow Sound or Lock Sound or something, they're going to come out with a way to do that built into the decoder. However, I agree with you. I think we can do that ourselves by consisting locomotives or using JMRI to properly make that manageable.
I think Chris got something over he wanted to screen share. So,
well, I'd like to see Dave get a little helping hand while we've got a Digitrax guy here to help him, because he can't run his locomotive. So, my questions could wait till another day.
No, actually, I think mine is a decoder issue and not a Digitrax JMRI issue.
Well, why don't you just throw it past us?
It's an MRC decoder, and I really have good luck with them.
Is it old or new?
It's pretty new, yeah. It's not one of the old ones. It's one of the newer ones that has the speaker on the board.
Oh, it's a sound decoder?
Uh-huh.
So what's the problem you're having?
I don't know. I set all my start voltages and acceleration and deceleration and all that, and I've even tried using the speed table and then not the speed table, and I just can't get any response out of the throttle.
Are those CDs that are supposed to be progression sheets? Because I know they're one of the older ones.
Tell you what, Dave, we're getting a lot of feedback, so can you mute while Chris is talking? Thank you. Go ahead,
There.
Chris.
Yeah, I had a MRC decoder, and it came in a used locomotive, and the guy told me it was a Tsunami. As soon as I threw it on the programming track and tried programming it and then running it, nothing was working. And it turned out to be, it wasn't a Tsunami. And then I started looking into it, and a lot of the CVs that are typically programmable were not. And that turned into being a big problem, so I don't go down that road anymore, being MRC.
Yeah.
I reset it to all the factory defaults and everything, and it's the sound and everything's all there. It's just that there's no response from the throttle still. So I'm going to take the shell off of it and make sure that everything's contacting okay.
I would make sure that CV19 has a value of 0. That's the consisting address. CV.
0?
Yeah.
Well, this particular locomotive I've never consisted, so it shouldn't be anything other than 0, but I'll check it.
My suspicion is you're dealing with a mechanical or electrical connection because it's communicating with the motor and firing sound, etc., but not firing the motor. And there's not, to my knowledge, any way to just disable motor function. I know there's people who use just the sound function of the decoder, say in dummy B units, etc. They just don't hook those wires up. I don't think you can just disable the motor control. Actually, I'm quite sure you can't, because those guys talk about making sure you insulate those wires and don't let them get to the frame because you'll fry your decoder in a hurry. And if they could disable that motor control, I'm sure some people would like that functionality. So my opinion is it has to be electrical or electromechanical issue.
Yeah, you can't disable the motor function
Nope.
physically, because a mobile decoder has to be wired through the motor. That's why they have accessory decoders and mobile decoders. You have to have the load of a motor on there, whether the motor's running or not. That has to be part of the circuit in order for it to function properly.
Yep. Now, what is working and what is not working on decoders? Are we getting sound? Are we getting lights? Or are we getting nothing?
Getting all the sound and the lighting and everything. We're just not getting any throttle response.
That sounds like it has to be either an electrical connection or a mechanical issue with the motor, or the motor's grounded, or which is not uncommon. But if it's communicating with the decoder, it don't sound like it's in the DCC. It sounds like it has to be in the locomotive mechanical.
Well, unless it's got one of those features like some of the older QS.
Yeah, you're breaking up real bad there, Chris.
All right, let me ask this: is it when you throttle the when you bring the throttle up, do you get an increase in sound in the throttle and just no response from the motor, or is it just sitting at notch 1?
Yeah, it'll throttle up and throttle down, but there's no response from the motor itself. No tractive effort.
Functions like bell and horn work, that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, everything works, but there's no tractive effort.
You know, it almost sounds like, yeah, either we got a bad CV program somewhere, or we got a loose wire somewhere.
Yeah, the motor's grounded, which I think would probably show a telltale sign in some other function if the motor was grounded. But
if the motor was grounded, you wouldn't get any audio either. He's either got a broken wire going to the motor, or the windings in the motor are gone.
Or it's just a bad decoder, and it's just not putting out motor control, which is entirely possible. Oh, I got one other thing I want to show real quick while we're talking about basic setup, something that doesn't exactly fit in the more advanced stuff as we move on. This is something that annoyed me with JMRI for a long time. Every time I would launch, you see all this crap running on my screen, every time I'd launch JMRI, I would launch a throttle and a fast clock. I would have to launch the Y throttle. I'd have to go into Panel Pro and turn on the web server and turn on the Y throttle web servers. You have to go start all those processes. On the preferences panel under startup, you can tell it to do a few things. You can go tell it, you can add actions, and you can tell it to do a series of things. You can tell it, so I have mine check for updates every time. I have it open up a single throttle. I use that pretty often. I may stop that eventually, but right now I've been using the throttle right here to test and play with the layout some. It's just quick and easy. I have it open a clock. Start the JMRI server, the simple JMRI server. That's what allows my other computers that talk to this computer as if this computer was the DCC system. That starts that. It starts the JMRI JSON server, which lets it run a web server. So, for example, you can open a web browser on a laptop, browse to my or navigate with a web browser to my system here, and I give anybody that came over with a laptop a link, and that also lets you use like a Windows tablet or something, and it has a web throttle, and it has the panels and stuff like that. And I'm going to use that for the panel control at at junction points on my layout. So I have a place where an interchange between two railroads was controlled by an operator in a passenger depot, and for that case, I'll have just an iPad setting there, an iPad Mini or whatever setting there, and that operator can control those turnouts and stuff, and that's done with the web server. And I have it start the web server, and I have it start the Y throttle server. So when I launch JMRI, it comes all the way up to this point right here with all this stuff running on it. Checks for updates, starts everything, everything's running. Then I also set JMRI to launch on startup. Now, if you're going to do if you're going to do Windows, then startup is a little bit different. In Mac, there's a way to set JMRI to launch on startup. So if there's a power outage, or if I reboot my computer reboots and comes all the way back to this. So I don't have to do anything. If I want to run a train, I can pick up an iPad or an iPod and run a train at any time without having to go launch a bunch of stuff or click a bunch of buttons. It's just sitting there waiting to run trains. Something I found handy.
And
Dave, back to your problem. You can run other engines, right? It's just this one particular engine you're having problems with?
Yeah, it's just this one engine, and it's the one that I've been running on the layout forever, man, and it all of a sudden just doesn't want to run anymore. I'll have to take it apart and maybe clean it, blow it out with some canned air or something. There might be a little cat hair or something in the worm gear or something.
Could be a little nail jam come up too. Whatever.
Yeah, I'll check it out though, but I'll probably figure it out. But yeah, all the functions and stuff are working fine on it. The sound is real good on it.
All right. Well, I guess I got a question I want to ask Chris then if we're done helping Dave.
Okay.
As you know, I just bought a power cab.
Yep.
Had a couple people tell me that you cannot run your engines that you program with the power cab on a Digitrack layout with the Digitrack controllers. Then I had someone else tell me, well, you can, but specific things are kept on the power cab controller base station itself, but the other CVs and stuff stay on the chip so that you can run it on a Digitrack system. So I guess my question is, if I got these new engines and I get this power cab all hooked up and I go in and I set some CVs or do whatever I want to do to these engines, I could still take these engines to a guy that has a Digitrack system and run them on his track with one of his controllers, correct?
Yes, except for consisting. And that's probably what somebody was trying to tell you. Now,
yeah, that was me. I'll admit, I was wrong.
Okay, so the only thing that
individually, that were not consistent, you should take them and should be able to run them on any layout with any system. And everything should function because it's all stored in the decoder. But when it comes to consisting, all bets are off because depending on how you consist it, some of that information is kept in the command station, not in the decoder. So you could, like in the case of an NCE advanced consisting, is exactly right. If you use that method, you take it to a Digitrax or even to another NCE system for that matter, you put it on the layout, it won't run unless you use the actual consist address and not one of the aliases being the lead or the rear locomotive address. So, as a quick,
the only thing I got to worry about then is the consist. If I'm not doing any kind of a consist, all bets are off. Everything will work with everything else. I'm good to go. Okay, that's all.
One of the things I noticed with, I took some of my Digitrax locomotives. They had Digitrax decoders in them, and I used them on my Digitrax layout. I took them over to somebody that had a power cab on NCE, and everything worked fine. Bell, horn, sound, motor function. One of the things I did notice was the NCE responded differently to the momentum of the locomotive versus when it was on my Digitrax layout. And what it had done was it almost like exponentially multiplied the momentum, both startup and stop. So I had on my layout, let's just say I had CV3 and 4, which is momentum on start and end, set at, something reasonable like 10. It would just take a few seconds for the locomotive to kind of get up to speed, and the same, going down. When I had that set, put that in a power cab system, it was like a minute each way, and it was like, it was very prototypical, but you couldn't stop. So
yeah, that's one of the things too. I guess that's partially command station and partially decoder, so that the different brands handle the momentum a little differently, even though they may use the same CVs, and they'll probably use different values, and how the command station...
it read the values. It's almost like it read the values or understood the values differently. Even though the CV was set for 10, it understood 10 as something other than, what the Digitrax understood it for.
Right, and these numbers are nowhere near correct, but just for example, let's say NCE considers momentum 1 through 10, with 1 being just a little bit and 10 being a whole lot. Well, Digitrax might look at it as 1 to 100. So when it sees that 10, it's just a little bit, or the other way around. If you had 100 in there and to Digitrax it only goes up to 10, well then it's going to say, well, that's a whole ton. It's kind of there's a value in the CV that's stored in the CV, but how the command station interprets that value is different between the different brands of command station.
In the case of what I had is it was a Kato locomotive, and I think it had the sound bug and whatever the corresponding decoder was in it, and I think it was like 40 or 60 or something, which was reasonable for a Digitrax system, but yeah, you got on the NCE and it was a minute.
Yeah.
But to answer the question, will it work? Yeah, it works. It works actually very well. Just it may read different CVs a little bit differently, I guess.
Well, and when you were talking about functions, that was another thing is, you might have 28 functions on your decoder, and maybe you have a 28 function command station that'll handle all of those, but then you go put it on a power cab or something else, and I'm not saying, Bachman, and it only will allow you to control up the first 10 functions. Well, you've got functions at 15 and 16 you can't use, where on your home system you could. So those are other things that are command station specific.
Right. Well, I have the Bachman, as he's called it, now.
Bachman.
But I had this power cab new in the box sitting here, but I was not, well, first of all, I was busy with the big build contest, so I didn't have a chance to really get to it. But I was also afraid of getting anything out of the box and saying, hey, wait a minute, I don't want this system. I want to be able to return it and get a Digitrax if that's what I needed to do. But it sounds like I'm safe to go ahead and use the power cab.
Absolutely.
And I don't plan on taking these engines anywhere else, but it just kind of perturbed me that there was an option. I thought that, wait a minute, if I program all these in my power cab, I can't take them anywhere else to use them on a Digitrax? Wait a minute, I don't like that idea. So
What's the manufacturer date on that, Jim?
oh, I got a new one.
Okay, if you
6 of
have the new,
15.
yeah, if you have the new one, you can actually plug your power cap into the Digitrack system and run your engine with it.
Okay. I don't know about that yet. I just want to make sure the other stuff that I heard, I just want to make sure everything was fine with this one. That was my main. Now, I got another question. That's totally different if you guys got the time to answer.
Sure.
Okay. I bought several new, actually, I got 4 new engines, all of them with lock sound, because when I searched the internet, everybody was ranting and raving about the lock sounds. I also read somewhere that using JMRI to access all the different features that lock sound provides can be like getting into a bowl of spaghetti, whereas if you use a lock sound programmer, it's way easier. What is a lock sound programmer? Is it software like the JMRI? Does anybody know?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
It's
Locksound's proprietary software. And, Digitrax has their proprietary software as well. When I do, Digitrax decoders, I'll use JMRI a lot. But, for certain things, for quick things, I'll use the Digitrax proprietary software. Well, the Locksound, they have their proprietary software. If you go to Locksound's YouTube page, they're starting to put a video series out there how to use their software. And it looks like it's going to be relatively robust. I haven't used it yet. I downloaded it, and I haven't used it. I haven't even seen if my PR3 will even interface with it, although I don't think it is a reason why it shouldn't. But it's just their proprietary software, and it's meant for their decoders. And it probably won't work well with any other manufacturer's decoders either.
Well, if I program, my main concern is if it's easier, that's for me.
okay.
But
Here's
I don't want to use the lock sound programmer and do all these fancy changes or whatever I could do with it, and then I can't figure out how to access it with JMRI. So I'm a little, because I really plan on using JMRI so I can have the wireless throttles when I want to. But
here's my experience, Jim. That if you bought those very recently and they're like version 4.0,
Right.
they are.
you should be okay programming them with JMRI. But
Correct.
if you find the older ones like 3.5 or older, avoid it like the plague. I had nothing but bad luck years ago to the point where I'm willing to try it again, but for the last 3 years I wouldn't touch a Loc sound no matter how good they sounded. And I did end up touching some for other people, installing for them, but I basically pretty much refused to program them just because of all the problems in the past. And now, had I run out and bought their programmer, that'd probably be different. But as far as everything I've been reading on the JMRI forums, it sounds like they've pretty much got everything ironed out, especially with the new Loc sound decoders. So I would say
The other thing that's useful about the Locksound proprietary software is its primary purpose is to download custom sound projects, something you're not going to do with JMRI. And that's going to be its primary use. Otherwise, normal CVs, speed match, sound levels, all the wonderful things with JMRI should not be any issue.
Okay, and that was another reason why I liked the lock sound was I had read that you could take the chip out of my SD40-2 and put it into a completely, totally different engine and download the sound file for that engine onto that chip, so you could pretty much reuse the chip if you wanted to. You don't have to repurchase. If say for some reason I dropped my SD40-2 from a 10-foot height that totally destroyed it, and I could salvage the chip out of it or something.
because one of the things they actually did, and one of the reasons for the programmers is they weren't shipped from the factory with any sound in them at all until they came out with those Loc Sound Select. They would literally send them to the dealers blank, and the dealers had to do the programming depending on what they were selling you.
I remember reading that. Yeah, I believe all these are Loc Sound Selects in them, but
The Selects have the sound programmed from the factory, but a lot of the other ones, like you order it from Litchfield or something, they program them right there before they send them to you with the sound that you selected. So, and you can also do it yourself at home by buying the software. So you
Right.
can
And a lot,
download it right from their website and load it right in, or
So-
create your own if you're so inclined. But
right. Yeah. So you can have it start up and sound like a Chevy 454 without an exhaust system when it powers up.
exactly.
All right,
No.
I got a
Some of
comment.
the
I got a
some of the
comment
great
over here
things
in
with
the.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Tom.
Sorry about that. You know, some of the great things with Digitrax and looks like Loxon, and I haven't gotten into it yet, but you could even take a base sound project if you're happy with the prime mover, or you're happy with this or happy with that. But you know what, damn it, I want a different horn, or you know, I want a different startup sequence, or you know, whatever that is. You don't have to do an entirely new sound project. I mean, in the Chicago Metro, you know, F40PH I did has got really it's got somebody else's sound project in it. I did a little tweaking to. I went out and recorded a Metro horn, you know, from a locomotive that ran through town here, and did a little work on it, and did the recordings in a format that the program would accept, and just changed the horn. So there leaves a lot of flexibility there to do different things.
Yeah. I got a comment in the Q&A here from Pro FKLYZLYR. He was saying that the lock programmer is both a software app and a matching hardware interface. Cannot use the lock programmer software without the lock hardware. Then his other comment is lock programmer most useful for specifically programming fresh sounds into the lock decoders, which y'all just mentioned. And as far as programming CVs, configuration stuff in any decoder, JMRI is more universal compatible.
Yeah, those are all great comments. Thank you. You're exactly right about the hardware.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for me too as well, because I'm absolutely new to this and I didn't know if I need to go buy something else to make it simpler. If there was something simpler than JMRI, but if I don't have to go spend money, I'm Yahoo on that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess my PR3 will not work, so I'm happy to know that. Thank you.
Yeah.
When
All
I,
right, Chris, you got something there? I got you on screen share. I see you got your workbench.
I was going to show how to hook up to the power cab system versus the full-blown pro cab that I showed earlier. If Jim or somebody was interested. So.
Well, yeah, if you want to show me how to hook this up before I start hooking it up, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm more than happy to watch.
NC Power Cab system is their entry-level system. You can see the difference here. One says Pro Cab and one says Power Cab right up at the top. The Pro Cab is your normal programming, full featured throttle for the normal system. Your Power Cab, even though it looks identical except for the name, it really isn't. It's got a command station built into it as well as a booster. And if you can actually take this throttle and this little black panel and plug this into the wall, and you have a full-blown command station. Or you can run DCC. All you have to do is from the back of here is run your two wires out to the track. So you plug your throttle into here, into this one, run your two wires out to the track, plug your power into the back of this, and you've got a portable DCC system. Now, the difference between this and the full-blown system is, remember I was showing you the RS-232 cable. Well, there's no provisions for that with a power cab. So what NCE did was they came up with what they call their USB adapter. Now this is specifically for the power cab. It doesn't work with the full-blown system. Some people have tried that and it doesn't function fully. It's really intended for the power cab system only. What it does is it allows you, this is your vehicle to connect you to the laptop over here and run JMRI. So what you do is I just made this little board, so I got both of them handy, and I can take them. I take them to my friend's house or to the club and program for people. And you just take a normal 4-conductor phone cable, and RJ12 or whatever, I'm just going to take a peek here quick.
These are non-twisted or twisted?
That's what I'm looking at here. So they're identical when you set them next to each other. I don't know if you can see that, the colors in there, but when you put them next to each other, they're same color sequence from left to right. What you do is you turn them so that the little nubs are both pointing in the same direction. Then you line them up end to end, and they should be the same. If they're not, it's an opposite or a twisted one, or vice versa, then it won't work. So, anyways, as long as you got the correct cable, I plug it in here, I plug it in here. And then we had a little discussion about this cable. You have to come up with a USB-A to a USB-B. Thank you for explaining that last week, Andy. This is your normal USB end that's going to go into the computer. This is one of those kind of squarish USB ones that'll be off of a printer or an older camera, digital camera. So that one goes into here. So you can see this is a lot more involved than the full-blown system. And that one goes into the computer. And I have to plug my power in.
Well, this is actually this is a little less complicated because you're doing the same thing with the other one. You have to go to your command station. This is just got
I'm just literally running one cable though from the computer to the command station. Or if you need that other type of USB adapter, not to be confused with this one. So this one I have to plug in. And one thing I did not get, stand by 1 second. Should have had this handy. So there's my 3-foot programming track. It's just a piece of wood with a track on it. Then I made up a little portable lead for connecting the track. So this has got the same little black plug that the normal system uses. In fact, I use this same cable for my full-blown system. So that just plugs into the back of here also. And by the time you get done, you got cables running everywhere. That's why it's kind of a pain, but I'm going to build this into a box one of these days and just have it plugged in. So I clip my little alligator clips onto the end of my test track. Now I'm ready to program. I'm going to get some of this other stuff out of the way here. And for some reason, oh, I got the wrong side in there, I think. One thing with the power cab is you have this 6-conductor cable rather than 4. I don't know why this is not going on. I haven't used it in a while, I just pulled it out of the drawer. Make sure I got power.
Cab goes in the left side.
Well, it depends on whether it's upside down or right side up, right? Is that the light down? Yeah.
Yep.
If my cable went bad, I know I was having problems with one end of it. Huh. I guess I can't demonstrate. It's not going on for me.
Geez, I'm feeling so overwhelmed about the stability of the power cab at the moment. I see I'm a little nervous now.
Before, it's only because we're on camera, I suppose, but unless I killed my cab somehow.
Is the power going to that UPC panel?
You know, I once got to teach an NMRA class in Springfield, Illinois, a couple years ago, and similar type thing. I was doing sound decoders and a little bit of JMRI, and had all my props set up, and had something very similar, to what Chris is showing there. Had a 2x with a couple tracks on there, one with a command station, one with a PR3 on it, laptop hooked up. Did a decoder install, two different decoder installs right there in the class, and went to go do the sound programming, and I forgot to download something on my laptop the night before, and I couldn't finish the presentation. But classroom full of people, and I couldn't do it all.
Yeah, it's that figures. This should be, my screen should be coming on, and it's not, which means that for some reason, and unfortunately I only have one of these 6-conductor cables handy, so in order to troubleshoot the cable, I'd have to.
Yeah, but do you know if you got power going up to your panel? Is there?
Not until you plug in. You have to plug in to complete the circuit. See.
So it doesn't have a power light on there to let you know that you got.
It does, but not until you plug into the cab and the cab accepts it. Then that little orange, there's a little red light down here on the front of the panel, but it won't go on until it completes the circuit in the cab. So I don't know what's going on here. Well,
yeah, but is your wall board have power on it?
Now I have to grab an amp. I've got it plugged in right now. Same thing my laptop is plugged into. That didn't die, so it's got a very bad battery. Would have one of these
Stick
plugs.
your tongue to us if you feel anything.
Yeah. Why do you think I don't have any hair? I did that one too many times.
Man, I've been so careful. I'm 54 and still got all mine. Maybe I should send this back and get a ditch so I don't go bald.
I guess this one's a fail, but anyways, to show you if it was working properly, just to review, you plug into here, run your little jumper to your USB, which is a 4-conductor versus a 6-conductor. Then you run a USB off the back of this to your laptop. Then you run your 2 track power from here to there. Then you fire up JMRI and you go through the settings, and I can show you those settings real quick if you want. I'll just share my screen. I'll open up JMRI again quick and share my screen.
And I'm thinking about that cable. Wouldn't that be a twisted pair if they come out the same? Doesn't it have to twist to be exact the same? Because if you're looking at it, your outside left is going to be your inside right if it isn't twisted. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
So you have to have it. So when I go online to search, I know I need a 4-conductor twisted. Should be right.
Yeah. I don't know if the one that runs to the USB board, I don't think it really matters. But it does matter when you're using your throttle. I know that.
And the terminology is this. So twisted pair refers to how the wires lay inside of the insulating sheet. So if the wires lay flat like a piece of Romex wire in your house, then it will not be twisted pair. However, a Cat5 or a computer network cable or a telephone cable are twisted because the blue, white, red, white, blue, green, white twist inside the cable to reduce cross-contamination of signal interference. It is a twisted pair of cable. Now, what you're referring to as to the ends being terminated the same is when you don't flip the transmit and receive. And what that's called is a crossover cable. So
crossover.
Yeah.
Called a crossover cable, where the ends are the same, and that means receive is tied to receive, transmit to transmit for a direct signal, versus a normal cable where the transmit and receive are flopped from one side to the other.
So Jim actually needs the non-twisted to connect those two together.
Well,
If you lay the cable flat, your little tab on one end will be down, and the other one will be up.
Right, that's what I'm trying to show right here. It's hard to tell, but if you look at this hand, the tab is down toward the floor, When you look at this hand, it's up toward the ceiling.
So that's a crossover.
Right. So if you bend them around, keeping it flat, you'll see that one tab is up and one tab is down. Now the way to really test this for NCE, the way I've learned it out of the book, is you just bring the two ends around and match them up so that both tabs point down, and then look at the color codes, and they should be the same from left to right. In this case, it's like blue, red, green, yellow, left to right. Now, if this cable had, when I pulled it flat, if this cable was up, that little tab was up on both ends, if you bring them around and match them up like this, you'll see that one will go blue, red, green, yellow, and the other one will go yellow, green, red, blue.
So I want to look for a crossover cable.
Correct.
Okay. Now, we established I could use
if that's what they're called. I don't know what they're called. I just know how to check it out according to the NCE book.
To get me started, I could use the coil cord just to get me started. But
Yeah.
I want to get a short, like what you've got there, so I don't have all that coil cord dangling.
Right. Just match the coil cord and you'll be good.
Okay.
That jumper right there, yeah, that jumper right there that you're using, that's actually telephone wire with an RJ12 on it. And the other wire with the 8 on it is a regular RJ12 Cat5 cable.
And this one comes with the NCE power cabinet. It's a 6-conductor.
Right.
It needs the extra 2 conductors for the power, for the actual track voltage,
Yes.
if you will.
DCC actual power going in.
Can I use a regular Cat5?
If I use this with the normal cable on a full-blown system, it's a 4-conductor. But if you go to the power cab and want to run it as a standalone system, you need the 6-conductor.
Yeah, you need the power running to it.
Right. If I put the 4-conductor on here, I can take this and put it in on a full-blown system or at the club, and it functions exactly the same as this one. The command station never fires up. It needs those extra 2 conductors to do that.
Yep.
So if I just get a 8-wire, I forgot what he just called it. The one for computers.
Yeah, there's
Oh, Cat5.
Yeah, if I just get an 8-wire Cat5 and I can just plug it in there as long as it's twisted or crossed over.
Those are different. You know, the ends are larger on the Cat5
Are they?
than
Okay,
on the
okay.
RJ12.
Okay.
RJ12. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just getting a little confused here. That's all.
No, your telephone cables are what you want, not the computer cables.
Okay.
They're not the same size plugs. They won't fit.
And a telephone wire is Cat3, network wire is Cat5, and then the plugs are different. So an RJ11 has 2 conductors like a telephone, and an RJ12 has 6 conductors. Well, an RJ11 can have 2 or 4, but an RJ12 has 6.
Yeah, 11's got 4.
Yeah.
But it's the same as an RJ12, though. On this.
So I want an RJ12 6-wire crossover.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not confused at all. I got it.
You can order the flat wire for the power cab to the UPC panel from NCE. It's like about $4. That's the black wire he's got there.
Right. I like the idea of just having it a few inches away from the other one, plug one into the other, and you're done. You don't have any extra wires dangling down. That's all. I was just going to buy a small one.
It omits the coil cord.
Yeah, I got it.
I'm actually thinking that this is bad, or my power cable itself is bad. My wall wart.
Don't have a digital meter you can check your wart with?
Yeah, I'm going to go do that next. It's in the other room. But what I'm doing here is I took the little 4-conductor. Now, if this is getting power like it's supposed to be, I can plug this into either port, and it should fire up. It just won't fire up as a command station. It'll fire up as a normal throttle. If you use the wrong cable, it'll still turn on
It just won't be able to do anything with
It
it.
just won't do anything exactly, and it's not coming on, so that tells me either my board fried or this wall wart is bad. Which I'm gonna go grab my multimeter real quick and test it.
The one good thing about the NCE systems that most of the replacement parts, like if the UPC panel is bad, you can replace it for like $12. So it makes it a lot cheaper.
I just thought I'd plug into a different plug real quick and try that, but it
Shouldn't fit.
didn't work.
It means a different outlet.
A different outlet. That's what I said, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I was lucky enough to find a Pro Cab and a booster and a wireless system for $100 on eBay.
I don't know where you find them, James. I watch them. I never can find them.
What'd you pay for your NCE unit?
130, 138, and then I got a $15 discount through eBay, or 15%. So it was
Yeah.
125 is what it cost me.
That's a good deal.
Yeah. Well, not as good as yours, apparently. I paid $25 too much. Plus, I didn't get all the extra.
No. That stuff was used though that I bought.
I
That wasn't.
tell you
new.
what, I got a guy here that wants Andy to talk a minute on the Raspberry Pi and JMRI.
Have at it.
You still there, Andy?
Yep. Navigating back. Well, there's a couple ways to use the Raspberry Pi. So there's a couple really kind of neat things. First, let me just show you. Raspberry Pi has a set of interfaces on the Raspberry Pi itself that are standard input-output ports, and you can choose the Raspberry Pi as a device, and mine's not going to work, but because it's not there, because I'm not running on a Raspberry Pi. If so, it would let me use the standard input-output ports. And actually, I'm just going to show you that. So, let me open this thing up. So I use the Raspberry Pis for a few reasons. One, mine have the camera module on them. So I'm using them for cameras above the layout so that people can run my layout from afar. So I can get on a Hangout, give you guys web access. You guys could run trains on my layout. So I have the camera module sitting here. You see the display there. It's 5 megapixel camera module with a ribbon cable. But the Raspberry Pi has a set of standard input outputs. You can take those and hook wires to them and control relays or control signaling system is really quite common, or turnouts, or any other accessories that you want it to, or turn sound effects on or off. So I'm going to use it for lighting control, for example. I'm going to let it control my lighting effects because I'm going to already have them mounted up above the layout in the valance, pointing the cameras down. I'm going to lay them up like this and mount the camera down here. But that works really quite well. Now, you can, for a very simple layout, run JMRI just on the Raspberry Pi. And you can hook a Sprog to it with a short USB cable, and that one little bundle is the entirety of your system. You can hook that to a monitor. It has an HDMI out, so you can hook it to a TV, and you can have a full functioning system with CTC and operations and a control panel and everything off of that and a Sprog. Now, it's not as fast of a system as you might want, like starting it up and everything, but that's using just the Raspberry Pi as your system. I use the Raspberry Pi running the JMRI, and I have multiple interfaces on them. It's not easy to do a screen share from it because they're not running full user interfaces. Like I don't have Chrome on it. I can't get on the Raspberry Pi and get on a Hangout, for example. They're not set up for that. But if you look at in JMRI, you can have multiple interfaces. So we can have a Raspberry Pi interface. What I have is my first interface is somewhere in here. I can't tell. I'm no good with alphabetical apparently. So I have JMRI over a network. This isn't working because I haven't saved it and closed it. If you set it to JMRI over the network, it will let you put the IP address in here. Here, we can probably do it this way. Of your server. So my server has an IP address. And on my Raspberry Pis, the first interface is JMRI over a network with a simple network connection. And I have an IP address. That IP address is the IP address of this server that we're on right here so that they can talk back to this system. That lets the JMRI that's running on this Raspberry Pi communicate back to my core DCC system for a few reasons and lets them communicate. Then I have another interface that has the Raspberry Pi, just the Raspberry Pi interface on it. And when it does that, it lets me, let's see if I can get it to show that without it actually running on a Raspberry Pi, but it may not do that. It lets it, yeah, it lets it show you the standard input outputs so that you can have them control things like, in my case, turning on evening lighting effects or a lightning effect if you wanted to fire lightning, or if you wanted to put speakers above your layout and fire off sound effects with it. This Raspberry Pi has a sound output, so you can hook a speaker to it and have network sound effects over the network. So there's a lot of things you can do with it, and a Raspberry Pi costs $35. I mean, it costs you a little bit more to fully outfit. It costs you $10 for a camera if you wanted that, and you need an SD card that'll cost $5, and blah, blah, blah. There's more that you can do to it. There's always more money you can spend, but ultimately, the $35, and you can double-sided tape or Velcro that bad boy into your valance or behind your fascia and have it as an additional JMRI interface or as your only JMRI interface. If you had a small switching layout, that would do the trick. You could have just a Raspberry Pi and a small monitor, and you don't even have to keep the monitor hooked up to it. You can hook it to your TV. Get the thing basically running, where I showed you the startup items so that when it starts up, it starts all those things. Have it set so that when JMRI starts up, it launches when the Raspberry Pi starts up, and it starts up as soon as you put power to it. There's no power button on it. When you put power to it, it fires up. Have it set up to launch JMRI, and in the JMRI preferences, set your startup to start your Y throttle. You can have one of these under your layout with no monitor hooked to it, and you could just turn power onto your layout, give it a minute, and open up an iPod or an Android phone and run trains. As simple as that, and you're out a $60 or $70, whatever they cost, Sprague, and a $35 Raspberry Pi. You have $100, and you use your phone to run trains. As simple as that, at the simple level. And then there's all these other sophisticated things you can do, like having a bunch of Raspberry Pis. I will have eventually probably 16 of them with cameras above the layout, so you'll be able to pull up a view and look at the overview of the entire layout, and that way you can run trains when you're not home, or if I want to run trains and you guys want to get on a hangout here and run a passenger train and operate trains with me, you can bring up the cameras, view all the cameras, and run a train. There's also another cool piece of hardware. I got one somewhere here close.
Yeah, that'll freak your wife out, Andy. She'll think you're at work and hear your trains running.
Yeah, at least I can look in on them. Well, she does not like the cameras in general. She puts socks over my cameras in the house, and
No, I'm talking about she thinks you're at work and you're at work running your train. She'll think you're at home.
they're fired up, sounds are going, yep. But the cameras through the house, she hates those. The ones outside is fine, but the cameras inside, she don't like those at all. And I've been experimenting with the cameras that you use to replace a peephole camera. It's a really, really wide angle, almost like a fisheye lens camera, and you can have just a little bitty peephole in the ceiling, and it gives you this really wide view of the layout below you, or in my case, the house. So I have home automation. All my lights are digital and computer controlled. They all have circuit boards behind them, and they're digitally controlled, so I can control any of my lights with my iPhone.
Damn IT guys.
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's that four-letter word. I'm a geek. So all my TVs are Apple TVs. I have a Mac server with I think it's got 24 terabytes of storage. I have all the movies and content and all kinds of stuff there. It automatically downloads new TV shows when it wants it. And I have home automation. But what I've been wanting to do is put those peephole cameras every 8 foot all through the house. And when you open an iPad up and look at the app I've wrote to control all this stuff, you would actually be looking at a live camera feed as if you removed the roof from the house and were looking at it from a couple hundred feet up. You were looking at the whole house. That way, when you turn a light on, you don't need a little thing on the control panel to let you know if a light is on or off. You actually look at a live camera feed of the house, and when you turn a light on, you get instant feedback as to whether that light actually came on or actually went off, because the camera shows you the light going on or off. It's as simple as that. And I've been working on that software for a while. This is the other piece of hardware I wanted to show you. And this is the one that's getting the most attention from hobbyist electronics and model railroading. This is an Arduino. This is an Arduino Uno. Uno. This is a very small form factor board, powered off of 5 volts or USB. Has a host of input outputs. I think this one has 16 on this one. A various arrangement of digital ins and outs. This is what I'm using to build my signal system. And I bury these in that little trough under the track work. They're small, 1.5-inch boards. They fit in that trough. Actually, I designed the trough to fit an Arduino Uno. They have a bunch of input outputs. This is a $15 board, and you can control. I have 4 signal masts, one of which has 4 heads on it. A couple of them have 2 heads, a couple of them with 1 head. So there's like a 12 or 13, 14, something like that, signal heads in one location, and I can control every one of those for that interface with one Arduino. So $15-20, full signal control for a major interface that has a Y terminating into 4 tracks, and all the various signals all controlled with a $15 board. And JMRI has native control for this. So you don't have to do anything weird to make this talk something else. JMRI can talk directly to Arduino.
I said I use Arduino for signal systems also, and I use what they call a piggyback. Plugs on top of your Arduino board.
Absolutely, get more inputs.
And you can control 32, 64, whatever you need for signals out of it.
Absolutely. The only reason I'm not doing that is because I'm just putting multiple Arduinos through the layout. Each module of my layout has all the electronics for that module in its entirety. So if I disconnect a module, the only thing going from module to module to module is power with DCC signal on it. That's it. All the signals at a given place, all the turnouts, everything are all controlled directly on that. There's no central buses coming back to a central location. From my computer to my layout, there's 2 wires. And from module to module to module, there's 2 wires. Everything is built into the module. So I can take a single module, go put it in the living room, hook up the 2 wires, and run a train.
Hopefully that answered your question there, Leroy.
So just to circle back real quick, my wall wart is dead, so I guess that's why we're having all the problems. So maybe next time I'll throw up, if we get a little chance after the show, I'll show you how to do that, Jim, when I get a new wall wart.
All right, and this is the link for the after show hangout. If anybody wants to go to the after show hangout, I'm going to head that way now, get the channel open.
All right, thank you, Jim.
Meet you over there.
All right, well, thanks everybody for coming in tonight, and I'll let Johnny close her up for us.
Yeah, let me get back in here and get my thing going.
I was just looking through here. I see, we'll just call him Professor for short. It's just reading through. I see you had a bunch of posts there. I wasn't catching all of it. Yeah, it's a lot of good stuff in there. So if anybody wants to read through his comments.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so I just want to say keep checking in on the YouTubeModelBuilders.com website for all the latest news and info on Tuesday night presentations, the e-magazine, and the live show schedules. Live show is once every month on the 3rd Saturday is the usual date. E-mag comes out bi-monthly every 2 months, and Tuesday night presentations. Every week has a new topic and new presenter. Thursday nights is a general hangout where we just talk about any and everything on trains. You can go to the website, sign up for the eMag to get notifications when it comes out every month. And I want to thank everybody that was in here on the panel for being in tonight. Seemed like we had a really good show. Some good information on JMRI and Digitrax and using Arduinos and Raspberry Pis. Appreciate that too. And guess we'll see you next week. And I didn't look at the schedule, so I can't tell you who is going to be on next week. So you go to the website, YouTube Mall Builders, and you can catch who's going to be next week. I think it's Gino. I'm not sure who he's going to have on or what his subject's going to be. So with that said, I appreciate it, and y'all have a good evening.